of all, I'm Karen Kassler. I'm the State House Bureau Chief for Ohio Public Media at the State House, and I'm really glad to have an opportunity to be here and lead this discussion that we'll have with our colleagues here. I'm supposed to remind you that there is the opening general session at 2:15, but for right now, we are at property tax, proposed constitutional amendment for complete repeal, and these are the proponents here. And let me introduce these folks. Brian Massie, right here, is a Lake County resident who is actively involved in encouraging transparency and accountability in local and state government. He founded Lobbyists for Citizens, a 501c4 nonprofit organization that provides research and information to help citizens better understand public policy and government actions. Next to him is Leonard Gilbert. He, along with Brian, helped start the movement focused on examining and rethinking Ohio's property tax system with the goal of fostering discussion about fairness, sustainability, and long-term solutions for Ohio residents. So what we're going to do here is allow these gentlemen to make a quick opening statement, and then I've got some questions, and then I'd also like to find out if you folks have any questions. I'd like to turn it over to you. So let's go ahead. Why don't you get started, Brian?
Thank you very much. We do appreciate the opportunity to talk about property taxes. This is not something that Leonard and I started with last week. We've been doing this for over 10 years. And I started basically looking at my own property taxes. I've lived in Concord Township for 10 years and the property taxes had gone up 40%. And I said, well, if they continue on this path, they're going to price me out of my home. So I didn't know anything about property taxes. I didn't know inside millage, outside millage, House Bill 920, 20 mil floor. So what I did is I set out to teach myself. I called the state auditor's office, asked about the calculations for the 20 mil floor, and we developed a phone friendship, and they said, Brian, you wouldn't believe it, but in Columbus, every special interest, has a lobbyist. The only group that doesn't have a lobbyist are the citizens. So that's why I started Lobbyists for Citizens, the 501c4. I believe honesty, integrity, and transparency are the keys to good governance. And I do that by exposing the lies, deceptions, and the betrayals. Now, I built myself out in Lake County as the most hated man in Lake County for doing that. But what I did was because of my accounting background, I asked for a public records request from all of the taxing authorities because I wanted to see if the numbers would tell me anything. And what it showed me was the accumulation of cash by these taxing authorities. Deepwood had 65 million, Lake Metro Parks 30 million, the Crime Lab had 10 million. And I said to the commissioners, I said, you cannot keep sucking the lifeblood out of the community. The money has got to be in the hands of the people so they can spend it to keep the local economy going. I also recorded, I've got, I don't know how many hundreds of videos I've recorded, but the two that were extremely important and revealing to me. Representative Ron Young, in his last day as a commissioner, he was also a commissioner and also a state rep. But on his last day as commissioner, he asked me to record him. I said, sure, I'll be glad to do that. And here's the message that he told everyone. The two top priorities of government is to protect itself and to grow. The two top priorities of any elected official is to protect themselves and get reelected. No mention of doing what is in the best interest of the taxpayers. The second video that I found very interesting to me was when I recorded Representative Dan Troy at one of his town hall meetings in Wickliffe. And what he said, and I cut it down into a 20-second video, but he says public school funding is the purest form of socialism. And I found that to be very interesting. I've got a third video I'll tell you about maybe later in the show. But I started with Leonard. We tried to talk to our local representatives. No one would meet with us. Callender, Serino, and even Dan Troy wouldn't meet with us. We went down to the state capitol, said, well, we'll talk directly to them. We spoke at the House Ways and Means Committee. We got a lot of smiles, but nothing. We spoke before the Representative Gromers. He had a committee to review and reform property taxes. When I started to tell them about Willoughby Eastlake getting $8.8 million without a vote of the taxpayers because of the 20 mil floor, they censored my speech. They played classical music over what I was saying. I found that to be reprehensible. When I notified them, they said, well, Mr. Massie, we just had a glitch. I would think one of our representatives would say, well, Brian, I'll read what you were saying into the record so everybody could hear it. No one was interested. We tried one more time. We started a program, SOS, Save Our Seniors. We wanted to try to get the property taxes for seniors eliminated at 65 years of age. We rented a room in the State House. We spent $50. They want to also charge us, for hookup to the audio visual. They said, no, we'll bring our own wires. We invited all the representatives. We invited all of the senators. The only ones that showed up were 6 legislative aides. I started to talk to the legislative aides. Not one of them was over 35 years of age, about the American dream. And then the thought just hit me. Their American dream is different than my American dream. I'm 79 years old here, part of the baby boomers. I've lived a great life in this country, based on the backs of those people that fought in World War II. And what we view is that it's our responsibility as citizens to make sure that future generations live that American dream. And I said to the commissioners, I said, if we stay on this path of ever increasing property taxes, we are going to price seniors and those living on fixed income out of their homes. That was years ago. And I believe that even more now. I could keep going on, Karen, but...
Let's let Leonard make a few comments here, and then we'll get to some questions.
I'll keep it short because I always follow Brian because we're pretty much on the same page here. But again, my name is Leonard Gilbert. I'm actually from Atlanta, Georgia, but I've been in Ohio now for about maybe 30 plus years, if not more. I actually started on this property tax issue about 15 years ago, but I looked at it from a theological standpoint, which is typically what we don't discuss. Now, being an engineer, I also look at data. So the first thing I did, I come to Ohio, I look at the data and look at all these statistics here. And I'm thinking, does anybody see the reality that we can't sustain what we're doing? And people were oblivious to it. Show them the chart. Oh, where'd you get those numbers from? Well, I'm taking it right from your report. And I'm saying, as an engineer, I'm looking at this, you cannot sustain this path. So they said, what do you think is going to happen? I said, people are going to start getting taxed out of their homes. You watch. Brian was sharing with me his tax bill. And before we know it, we started going out talking about this issue. And we also started to look at the fact that what was really happening. People started calling us, telling us, guess what? We're getting ready to lose our home because we can't afford the taxes. I said, there is something terribly wrong here. Now, we always look at this thing as a dollar and cents issue, but what I'm trying to tell you, I also look at life from a biblical issue. And I always ask a candidate when I vet them, how do you differentiate between right and wrong? That's when they go silent. You know why? Because if you don't have a good theological base, your theology is your lifeology. So when you make decisions have consequences. And the decisions that we've been making in this state are absolutely abysmal. And what I see happening now is we're driving this state into the ground. And I can share with you some statistics when we start to get into the reality of where we are. But for someone to start talking about what we're going to do to keep the property tax, looking at the path we're going on, and not thinking about the plight of the people and the lives we're destroying, that to me is just reprehensible.
All right, well, I'll start in with a couple of questions. And I think the first one that most people ask you, and I know, Brian, I've asked you this directly. We have $23.93 billion collected in local property taxes last year, according to the Legislative Service Commission. And that's money that funds schools, libraries, police and fire, mental health services, senior and children's services. How do you propose replacing that? You've said that it's the lawmakers' problem, that they have to figure that out, but that's a lot of money to be replaced and a lot of services that people depend on.
Unfortunately, you can see my little chart there, the public sector has outgrown the private sector's ability to pay for services. So when people say, well, how are you going to replace dollar for dollar? We're saying we're not. We think the very first thing that you want to do is take a look. School funding is about 2/3 of the property tax bill. So for us to, when we think about, well, are we going to continue our current public school system based on just the proficiency scores? I found out that from Laverne Gore, when she was running for mayor of Cleveland, she said on her podcast, 2/3 of the kids in the Cleveland Public Schools are functionally illiterate. Reading some of the reports from the Ohio Department of Education, you got 1/3 of the kids at third grade reading level, only 1/3 are proficient. 50% of the kids in middle school are only proficient in math. So why would I spend the same amount of dollars to get these same results? The first thing that you need to do is you need to say, do I need 611 school districts? Lake County Auditor Chris Galloway was right in line with our thinking when he said we can take it down to 94 school districts. We don't need 611 school superintendents. Do we need all of this administration? Where we just found out that Mayor Bibb is looking at saving $30 million a year because of the declining enrollment, because of the issue with the abortion issue. We don't have as many children, so he thinks he can cut down. What was it, Leonard? 29 schools?
Yeah, 29 schools.
29 schools.
$30 million a year.
$30 million a year.
I think that relates more to people moving out of Cleveland and moving elsewhere.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, but that's a part of it. Yeah, but,
So the issue of, we're saying we're not going to replace it dollar for dollar. We're going to take a look at how do we operate, take our schools more efficiently.
Right. Leonard, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to share some statistics with you because I don't think people understand the plight of this state. We rank maybe the 8th highest in the nation for property tax. We got the 9th highest in the station for overall tax burden. We got the 13th highest in the nation for gas tax. It's the 6th highest in the nation for regulatory burden. We rank 37th in the nation for median income. We rank 4th highest for unemployment. And Ohio ranks 43rd in the nation for population growth rate. You got 20 counties gained in population and 68 counties declined. Now, when I look at this, and someone asks me, what am I going to do to replace the property tax system? The first thing I say, have you lost your damn mind? We need to start having discussions about what are we going to do to reduce the size of government. Nobody wants to attach it. We look at this education system. Nobody wants to touch it. You cannot stay on this path. What you're going to do, you're going to continue down this path, and they say, oh, we have to do it for the children. Well, what you're doing is sending these children right into the abyss. They won't know what's going to hit them, and we're going to be responsible for it because we didn't take responsible action looking at our environment and saying to ourselves, what are we going to do to prepare to fix this environment that we're living in? No one wants to have that discussion.
Again, you've said that this is the lawmakers' problem to figure out. If you get your signatures, get to the ballot, and get this approved, then lawmakers are going to have to figure that out. But are you willing to see schools and police departments and fire departments and libraries and all these places close down while we figure this out?
Am I willing? I think it's up to the legislators now to start working now. Because the citizens are not backing down on this. If they, we've been asked, well, Brian, what would you settle for? We've been talking to people throughout the state, and they want abolishment. Freedom and liberty is the foundation. Home ownership is the foundation of the freedom and liberty. And if we don't have that, if we don't own anything, what are we but serfs to the government? Will you be happy if you don't own anything? Do you want to consign future generations to be dependent on the government? Is our 250-year experiment, is it over?
I've heard that argument, that if you own your home, you shouldn't have to pay property taxes, that they're essentially rent you're paying to the government. And that property taxes should be like sales taxes. Once you own your home, then you don't have to pay property taxes anymore. But property taxes don't pay for your home. They pay for services that are used by the community, the schools and police and fire and libraries and that sort of thing. So
what I don't understand, if you're talking about police, what does the value of my home have to do with what I should pay for the police department? I've been a big advocate for, I've spent $2,100 a year for Concord services, police, fire, roads, and bridges. I said, I want to know how much I'm paying for police, how much I'm paying for fire, because why would I pay more or less than my neighbor for the police department based on the value of my home? And then we ask, well, what is the role of government? Should the government be in the business of valuing property? When did that happen? We spent in Lake County, we spent $1.8 million to a third-party appraiser. I asked the appraiser with his latest sexennial revaluation, well, let me see your calculations. How do you do that? And he said, no, we can't show you that because it's all proprietary. I said, no, let me get this right. You receive $1.8 million of taxpayer money. You control our destiny, but you're not accountable to us. Do I have that right? Yeah, that's basically it. I said, well, there was a tea party in Boston a few years back on that very subject. So why are we doing that? If we're paying $1.8 million in Lake County, how much are we paying overall? And the other thing I heard was that in Lake County, they said, well, Brian, if you don't have property taxes, you won't need a treasurer or an auditor in every county. And I said, well, that's a start. The government has outgrown our capabilities to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why people don't understand that.
And one of the things I've heard quite often is if you get rid of property taxes, you have to increase the sales tax. But you've been saying that people are getting priced out of their homes through property taxes. Won't higher sales taxes hurt people who are struggling to pay the cost of everything right now?
If you're not willing, if you think the sales tax would be too high, wouldn't that be an indication that maybe we're spending too much on the, with property taxes? It's the basic thought of, well, we're happy, what we've got right now, so we should just keep on doing what we're doing, and maybe we'll take it from another form. We don't agree with that.
Yeah, and that's the problem. See, we've lost the basic sense of economics. This is not complicated here, all right? If I'm digging a hole, and I don't want the hole to get any deeper, you put the shovel down. What I'm saying is we continue to dig, and no one's looking at the reality of the plight of the state. And I'm saying you don't need to start increasing taxes, you need to start reducing the taxes, because when you reduce taxes, you actually create an environment of prosperity, not for the state, but for the individuals that want to move here. And right now, that trend has to be stopped. If not, you're going to die a slow death on this state.
Now, last month there were 113 school levies on the ballot statewide. 74 passed, which is a passage rate of 65.5%. 18 out of 20 library levies passed, with an average of 63% of voters approving those levies. This implies that people like their local services and want to keep funding those.
Yeah, if the, and what we're trying to tell people, if they continue to vote for these property tax levies, they're funding their own demise. Many people don't even understand property taxes. Believe it or not, there's a percentage of the people that go to the ballot box, vote for these levies, and they do not correlate voting for that levy to seeing an increase in their property taxes. So we've got a real education problem in the state.
And is there anything that, lawmakers have just passed a couple of property tax related measures, and there's been a lot of talk about increasing transparency. Is there anything that lawmakers can do on the transparency side that would help?
Well, it would have been nice if they would have talked to Leonard and I, a few years ago on this, so that we could at least debate with them on the property taxes. They chose to ignore us completely. Like the average citizen doesn't count for our legislators. So people are asking me, what about these last 4 or 5 issues that passed? I said, too little, too late. Because as we've been talking to people throughout the state, they're telling us, don't back down, Brian, don't agree to something less. They want to put it on the ballot, and they want to vote. And I would think all of our representatives would want the people to vote on this issue to see what they really think. Now, if they think that people won't vote for it, then what are they worried about?
Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, one of the things, this is what our society is in serious trouble. This is more than a dollar and cents issue. When I look at our society, we're ungodly to the core, all right, we're uneducated, and we got an impotent church. That is a recipe for disaster. And what I'm saying is, we're sitting here, keep telling ourselves, what are we going to do to replace it? But again, no one's thinking about the reality of our plight. You cannot continue to do this. So my contention is that if you don't start taking this seriously, and we always talking about, oh, well, you know, you're talking about hell here, but you can have hell unleashed right on this earth, and I'm seeing it with people calling me every day, losing all their generational wealth that they put their lives into, and we're treating this like it's nothing. This is what bothers me. This is a mark of an ungodly society, and you will have consequences for that. And if we want to do that, you know, like I said, I'm just a prophet telling you what's going to happen if you don't obey God's word.
I think I mentioned we had the Save Our Seniors as our first go-round. Legislators told us, we're not going to carve out anything for seniors. We said, well, that's sort of interesting. So you're telling seniors you really don't care if they get priced out of their homes. No, we can't favor any one particular group. It was at that point in time when the legislators, told us that, we came to the conclusion we ought to starve the beast. They're not listening to us at all. Now I know Representative Thomas from Ashtabula has done a great job of trying to come up with something, but he's limited by what Matt Huffman's going to allow him to do. We've got Commissioner John Plechnik out in Lake County. He's done a great job. He was to the best of my knowledge, he was the very first commissioner in Lake County to sign our petition. He's helped us collect signatures. And he has been with us as we travel throughout the state talking to people about property taxes. And his message is, pure and simple, that the rent and the property taxes are too damn high.
Isn't one way to approach this, though, you say that lawmakers haven't been listening to you. Mm-hmm. Well, lawmakers in the House are elected every 2 years and the Senate every 4 years. Isn't that a better approach to find people who are interested in your cause here and finding people who are willing to work with you?
Well, I would be more impressed if I found enough legislators that even understood our property tax system. They don't understand it. So, and the deception with people, let me tell you these deceptions, inside, outside millage. I'm going to assume that everybody knows what inside and outside millage is. Outside millage, though, the deception is that with the 20 mil floor and also with joint vocational school funding are all funded by outside millage voted on by the taxpayers. However, joint vocational school is not subject to House Bill 920. So therefore, outside millage is treated like inside millage. So if there's a 10% increase in property values, there's a 10% increase in the revenue for that joint vocational school. That's a deception by the taxpayers of not informing. 99% of the people in the state of Ohio would not even understand what I just said. They just wouldn't do it. Any tax that causes a citizen to become homeless is immoral. I want to get that across to the people. I've interviewed many people, and I've recorded many of our citizens. I just recorded somebody in Greene County, I believe it was, that a veteran. He's lived there, with his wife 40 years. He's going to lose his home. Does anybody care? Again, do we care about freedom and liberty for future generations? Or are we just going to keep on doing what we're doing?
Leonard, I want to ask you about something that you said. You said that we're uneducated.
Yes, ma'am.
Is a way to deal with that cutting public schools?
That would help.
How does that help people be more educated?
I was a trained socialist. Let's get this clear. I was a trained socialist going through public education. All right, I didn't know it. Fortunately, by God's grace, I saw the reality of what was going on. The other thing I could tell you is this. We were fortunate enough to be able to homeschool our kids. Now, not everybody can do that, but there are alternatives are out there. Now, here's what I'm saying. I look at the reality of where we are. If you're spending $17,000 to $18,000 a year on average to educate a child, and I'm telling you, I did this in 10 years, and my wife and I, God bless her, I know it's been 6, 7 years now. But the thing is this, we didn't spend that kind of money over 10 years. 2 engineers out of it, all right? And they were not confused about who they were, because education is a personal issue. It's a transfer of knowledge. The question is what knowledge is going to be transferred. So all I'm saying is when you look at all these schools and what's taking place in those schools, they turned out to be centers we're trying to use those mechanisms, schools as mechanism to absorb the relationship that they should have with the family.
Well,
And that's what's happening.
most kids attend public schools in Ohio, and public
Yeah.
schools are actually required in the Constitution. So we have to continue funding public schools according to the Ohio Constitution.
Knock yourself out.
Article
Just get
6,
to-
Section 2 of the Ohio Constitution, it definitely says that the state is responsible for
Yes.
funding. But there's also something, it's interesting, all of our legislators take an oath to support, protect, and defend the Constitution, right? Have them take a look at Article 1 of the Ohio Constitution. Part of it says, defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and seeking and obtaining happiness and safety. Do you think the legislators are violating their oath? Are they protecting our property? I think not.
Well, now they have said repeatedly that they get more calls on property taxes than probably any other issue. They've done some reforms that they say will provide $2 billion in property tax relief, but you're saying that that's not enough. You're going to continue your effort.
We just want it on the ballot so that the people in the state of Ohio get to have a say in how the state is run.
When I'm struggling with, what is the angst associated with me wanting to own my home? What is wrong with that? This is what I'm just baffled by the logic. If I buy something,
But property taxes
yeah.
don't pay for your home,
Yeah,
they pay for
but I have to
services.
pay to live in it. You see what I mean? So I don't own it. I'm basically I'm a serf or just a renter to the government. Because if I miss 3 consecutive payments on my home, all right, or the tax problem, or property tax, I could lose my house. Maybe 40 years. I worked all my life. We all have ups and downs in our lives. So you're telling me that I could lose all the stuff that I put into it because I can't afford to pay the property tax? There's something wrong here.
Also, we get the younger generations. I now find that the first-time home buyers are 40 years of age, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now they're talking about having a 50-year mortgage just to be able to afford it. So that means they're going to be 90 before they can own their home. That's not the American dream.
But that's not property taxes, that's
Yeah, but
housing prices.
it is. I started out by educating people on the housing affordability threshold. I wanted them to know, can they afford this property tax levy that they're voting on? Right over their head. They could not comprehend that if you pay property taxes, your mortgage, and your utilities, if those 3 factors equal 30% of your annual income, that house is deemed unaffordable for you. That doesn't mean you have to move, but you have less needs, less money for your needs and wants.
I've seen, you have a Facebook group that I've been looking at some of the comments there. There's a complaint that the costs of government have gone up, especially personnel costs, and those personnel costs don't benefit, say, students. But don't teachers, police officers, firefighters deserve raises, deserve living wages,
Sure they do.
especially if we want to get the best people for those jobs?
Sure they do.
How do we pay them?
Pardon me?
How do we pay them then?
Send me a bill. Send me a bill. Just don't, nothing gets tied to my house. Right.
Yeah, we're just saying.
Nothing gets tied to that.
So, do you, I'm going to open it up for questions here in just a second. I just want to ask real quick. Do you maintain that people will save money if they don't pay property taxes, but they're getting higher sales taxes, higher income taxes, they're getting bills? Are you saying that they will save money by this idea?
Not unless you cut the size of government. If you're replacing it dollar for dollar, there may be some people that are saving, but unless there is an actual cutting the size of government and the cost, and you're starting with the schools, no, you're going to be back in the same soup.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the reality. We're not talking about what is the role of government. And that's something that I can't get someone to give me a straight answer. The role of government is very simple. It's just to maintain law and order. We've gotten to a point where we have government doing everything in our lives, and now we don't even know what the word self-government means anymore. It's totally foreign to us. We've taken the abnormal and made it normal. And now trying to reverse that trend is going to be very difficult. And the same system that I was trained in is doing the same thing to the kids today, looking at what's going on, and they're going to think this is normal. This is totally abnormal.
I'm wondering if you folks have any questions, if anybody would like to step up. I have some more, but I'd love to hear what you folks want to ask these gentlemen. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm Mike Yoder. I was a county auditor for 6 terms, and I was president of the County Auditors Association of Ohio twice. I will first tell you that I hate property taxes as much as anybody does. But I will also tell you that I don't know how we'll do it without them. Let me tell you a little story. This problem's been going on for a lot longer than you've been involved with it. I was county auditor from 1995 to 2018. In 2007, there was a revaluation in our county that was similar to what we're seeing these days. There were 3 of the 4 schools at the 20 mil floor, and the 4th one was not. The 3 that were at the 20 mil floor, we had a 30% increase in value. Those 3 school districts had a 20% increase in taxes. Unacceptable. The one that wasn't at the 20 mil floor had a 5% increase in taxes. If I can get it to 5% over 3 years, I feel pretty good about that, first of all. Second of all, that revaluation was so difficult that I received 2 death threats as county auditor. And I'm telling you that even though I did that, I'm in this for the right reasons. And the fact of the matter is that if we don't have some form of property taxes, maybe not at the level we're at now, but if we don't have some form of property taxes, we will.
Well,
that was nice. Yeah.
We will lose our electricity.
somebody may have leaned against the light switch.
I now know exactly how you feel, Mr. Massie.
I think that must be a sign.
I think it must be too.
You were saying.
Let me get to that point, which was I had those 2 death threats. It was very difficult and it was a rough time. That was almost 20 years ago. At that time, I started talking to state legislators. I started pounding my fist. There are state legislators who know every time I walk in the room, I'm going to tell them what you need to do is abolish the 20 mil floor once and for all. And once you do that, the only millage that's going to see an increase is that inside millage. And then you've got a program that will actually work and it will not price people out of their homes.
Thank you. I can tell you, talk about death threats. As Leonard and I go through this, we have been told by several people in the know, Brian, just make sure that you're not processing these petitions in your home, because you're talking about $20 billion, and you plan on taking $20 billion away from people. They may firebomb your home. Also, they said, Brian, you may want to exercise your Second Amendment right and carry. And I'm thinking, what kind of society do we have where we can't have civil discourse? So I empathize with you, and what we're saying to the average citizen that are counting on us when we talk about it, we'll stand on the front lines for them because they want to be heard. They're saying to their legislators, you're not hearing us.
And that's what they were saying to me as well. As an auditor, I'm saying, you need to do something because this is not working. I agree with that, but abolishing property taxes completely, throwing a bomb in the middle of it is probably not the correct answer.
Anybody else have another question you want to get up and ask? Great.
Usually the group that's with me cringes when I come up to talk, and now they're encouraging me. So, a couple observations. I hear you guys cite your concerns about life, liberty, protection of property, and the demise of our country. Yet your solution is to essentially, as you said, drop a bomb, burn it all down, so that there won't be any protection of your property. I'm a chief of staff, former finance director for Summit County. During the Great Recession, we cut workforce by 1,000 employees and have struggled to maintain services ever since. Police and fire are some of the biggest things funded through property tax measures. Communities they would be gone. I joke, we don't want to, and I half joke, we don't want residents to call and instead of hearing 911, what's your emergency, hearing 911, can you please hold? And then waiting 10 minutes to only be told, sorry, we don't have anybody to send out. I'm not sure how that protects your property. You also buy property insurance, I'm sure, to protect your property. You pay different rates based on the value of it. This is how the tax system is structured to provide for societal good, not educating kids. And here's the biggest problem with this measure. If it passes, taxes end. In Summit County, we have $800 million of overlapping bonded debt from the taxing authorities. Those bondholders have pension funds, investment funds. They're gonna get repaid. That's just even less services that we can provide. School districts would be filing for bankruptcy overnight. It would literally decimate the economy of Ohio. So it's not a responsible approach to the system. And our state legislature, the tax reform, going back to 1970, they put a constitutional amendment on the ballot to create the homestead exemption because there was so much concern about property taxes. During that time, it passed. The state made a pledge then to implement the homestead exemption and owner occupancy credits and all of that. The state then took income tax dollars, sales tax dollars, and paid that part of the tax bill for residents. Since that time, the state has continued to cut income taxes specifically and pushed more and more down to local jurisdictions to say, you want this stuff, go get the voters to approve it. That's one of the things that has led to this dramatic increase in property taxes, the reliance. The other thing I would tell you is when we looked at our county budgets and we had the big property valuation increase that occurred 2 years ago, which is really what's brought this to the forefront. We were asked by our county council, should we reduce our inside millage? We went back and looked, and for 2 decades, from 2006 through almost 2 decades, through 24, our inside millage growth had not kept pace with the rate of inflation because we had valuation reductions that occurred during that period. So our response then was, well, no. I mean, this tax, the inside millage we collect hasn't even kept pace with the rising cost of these services. Now, as we look forward, we just, in Summit County, put on the ballot a charter measure to cap growth on a charter millage that we would enact in lieu of inside millage to cap it at 3%. So they won't go up 20% the next time values do. We think that's responsible. I agree with you wholeheartedly. That 20 mil floor, there's gotta be at least an inflationary cap or something placed on that because the intent of that was for school districts who could not get a levy passed, they would at least be able to continue to grow their revenue and operate at some base level. School districts began essentially playing games with that and taking advantage of it. That does need addressed. But the idea of just burning everything down, it will decimate the state of Ohio's economy. So it's not going to preserve it.
Has the state budget gone up over the years?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Now, why did they reduce the local government funds then?
Because they wanted to cut income taxes. So they cut assistance to local governments, which then pushed more.
And we're saying the cutting income tax, is that the right approach?
I would tell you no. I think just like your investment portfolio, you don't want all your eggs in one basket. You need a tax policy that's well-rounded, where high earners pay a certain amount. Listen, the property stuff was the first tax in the Constitution. At the time it went into the Constitution 100 and some years ago, it was the only tax. But same with sales tax. There's a place for all of them. When you start cutting one and pushing more reliance onto another, that creates a problem. And I think everybody in this room realizes our state legislature is never going to respond to this in a timely enough fashion, because if this goes into effect and January 1, there's no more property tax collection, nobody has reserve balances to say, oh, let's work on this for a year. We immediately start the layoff process of teachers, police officers, firefighters, everybody, road crews, roads will be falling apart across the board. And by the time something gets solved, good luck putting it back together. Most of those people have probably left the state to go somewhere else at this point. That's what I find. There's a little bit of disingenuous in terms of what you're saying your reason is, but what you're willing to do, which is exactly going to cause the pain you say you're concerned about.
Oh,
stopping
we
from happening.
appreciate your,
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
your position very much. We don't necessarily agree, but thank you.
Any more questions? Oh, come on up.
So I'm gonna say this as full disclosure, Leonard and I have been really probably close to best friends for 30 years, so I knew when he started this, I remember him saying to me, long before I was a commissioner, he was trying to talk to state legislature. And as a commissioner, we understand that there's sometimes, and I'm not gonna bash the state legislature, but there are times when we as commissioners feel like we're not heard either. So I understand that, but I really appreciate what you said, Brian, was the fact that we have failed to teach our children. I'm adding to what you said, but we have failed to teach our children how to have discussions. I hear the statement that the two things you shouldn't talk about are religion and politics. No, that's a shame to us that we haven't taught our children how to have that discussion without shooting each other or killing each other. We need to have those discussions, because I do believe that attaching a tax to somebody's home, because I sat on the board of revisions the last couple of years, I saw some older couples come in nearly in tears because they were about to lose their home. That's garbage in this country. We shouldn't be doing that to people. And I do appreciate what you said, because we have an issue with our county seat in Huron County in Norwalk has a sliding tax for garbage collection, 1/4%, which I have to pay, and I don't live in the city, and I don't get to use the service, but I pay it because I have to pay it. Again, we have some problems with tax things, but I listen to people who make $200,000 say, how come it costs me 1/4% of $200,000 to have my trash pickup? And my neighbor makes $10,000 and he pays 1/4% of $10,000. How in the world is the trash cost so much different? So I think there are some ideas there that ought to be explored as to whether you can privatize certain things or not, whether you can cut back on some services. And I think some of the questions that we ought to be asking is, where's the bang for the buck? So I know, my mother was a school teacher, public school teacher. I know, I saw some exams, I wish I'd have kept them. There was one that was a graduation exam from 6th grade, 1900. And we talk about how our grandparents or great-grandparents, they only went to the 6th grade or the 8th grade. Have you ever seen one of those exams that was from like 1901 or whatever? Those are more than college entrance exams, and these were 6th graders that were taking them to graduate from 6th grade. I want to know why we're spending so much money on the cost of schools and per pupil to educate, since 78% of the property taxes in Huron County go to the schools. Why is it that 20, 30 years ago we were paying this much and we were getting results like this? And now we're paying this much and we're getting results like this. And I don't mean just Huron County, I mean across the country. And I know, I watched the superintendent or mayor of Cleveland, Mayor Bibb, talk about this. 40%, I think it was a 40% decrease in school enrollment in Cleveland. People are flooding out of the public school systems across the country. I have a place in Florida that I don't live at yet, but hopefully one day I will. And I watched Orange County down there talk about it, 40%. I mean, so this is across the country. People, I think the voters need to have a chance to say what they want to say. And I think that has to do with a lot of things. But ultimately, I like your idea that if I'm going to use something, I should pay for it. We had some people in New York City that just decided to vote in somebody who said you can have everything for free. But we know that doesn't work. I know Commissioner O'Grady, he's in here. He's got more money in his town than he knows what to do. He's going to send it to me. But even he wouldn't say everything's free. So I just think that it's a conversation that we should have.
Anything? We've got about 13 minutes here. So Anybody else have questions? I think this gentleman had a question right here, and there's another one, so. Oh, would you move your mic?
I have a couple questions.
There you go.
I own
Sorry.
real estate, and this would benefit me more than most people in the state of Ohio. So, I understand that what you're coming up with. I don't want to pay the real estate tax, but let me tell you a couple of things. Yeah, you're saying there's a problem with the schools. Well, okay, if there's a problem with the schools, reform the schools, okay? If there's a problem with, the way the government's spending, reform it. But to throw the bomb out there, let me put it in perspective. Border towns, let's think of this. We're paying 18 to 20%, right, in sales tax, assumably. Go to Toledo, they're gonna cross the border into, different states to go buy products and services at a lower cost. There's an economic impact there, and it's significant. You've got a lot of large cities on border towns. So there's a sales tax there. Let's think of this too, blighted properties. Okay, I'm a landlord, I'm a slumlord. I buy all these houses at a sheriff's sale for $500 a piece. I don't have a ramification for doing anything to that property. I can let it sit. And the property taxes will force you either to do something with it and clean it up or let it fall apart. There are many, many ramifications that you guys probably haven't thought about. Veterans Administration. Look, you know what? You want to hear some people screaming? You're going to eliminate Veterans Administrations across the state. Yep. These are the people that protect our country. So I think you need to really, really, really look deep and see what you really need to do. The property tax itself, all of us in this room don't want property taxes, but we know what those property taxes cover. It's reform that we should be looking for if we need it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Pete Gerken. I'm Lucas County Commissioner. I've been Commissioner since 2005, served on City Council in Toledo before that, and I'm a 30-year retiree of the Jeep Corporation. I worked for a living as well as the population. I did 30 years in a factory, putting out a product that's worldwide well known. And I'm proud of both my careers. It's what you're not saying that scares me more than some of the things that you are saying. You, Leonard, talked about the schools being a socialist breeding ground, and I hear that right?
Yes, sir.
You don't understand public schools. You don't understand public schools with urban centers. My wife's a school board member, spent 49 years in a district, gave her life to it, and is that now. Here's what you don't understand. One of the problems with public schools is poverty. Poverty. You don't want to talk about poverty. I just looked it up. Ohio is 38th out of 50 states in most metrics. It's because we don't take care of people in the right way, and I'll agree with you on this. But you want to talk about being a socialist? I think you're worse. You're a nihilist and you're an anarchist. You're the guy that comes to the room, throws the bomb in, makes a loud cry, and runs off and looks at the destruction. You are not willing to take responsibility for the aftermath of the chaos you want to sow. And whatever prophet or God you have wrapped yourself in, it's not the God that I know that would create a chaos, would create harm, would create trauma, and go, I did my part. It's now somebody else's problems. So your prophet may be yours. I don't recognize that, and I don't think most people in these rooms. So you want to be part of the solution, that takes work.
Sure.
That takes decades of work. You're not working toward a solution. You're already looking for chaos to do it. And I challenge you to rethink your position. Many of us are willing to work about reforming government. We've done it in my county, done it in my city, but you have to look at the other factors that get this state where it is. Nobody wants to talk about poverty. Nobody talks about the separation of wealth, right? Don't throw a bomb in here and run away. Don't be that kind of terrorist.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions? I know we're almost done. We've got 9
How many
minutes.
signatures do you have and how many you need?
That was actually one of my questions.
Did I miss it?
No. It's I was going to close. You're great. I'm glad he's hearing that from you. But hold on one moment. Just go ahead.
Okay, I've got issues on a number of levels, but the one thing that is just really sticking with me is that in our office, the Guernsey County Commissioners, it was late in the day and I was the one commissioner that was still there. Clerk comes back and says, I think you need to come up front, which I did. And greeted by a woman there who was asking me if I wanted to sign the petition. And I explained no, and I explained why. And I said, you know, you're talking about eliminating your fire protection, your 911 call center, and articulated the damage that you would be doing with this kind of an effort. And she said, oh, no, that's not what's going to happen. And she has her little clipboard there and her little laminated sheet of information, all of her little talk points, and in bold letters it said, this will not defund anyone. This is a lie that is being propagated, at least in our county. And you have a right to put this on the ballot. I am not going to challenge that. But to do it, at least in Guernsey County, and I have a hunch that we're not the only one out of 88 counties this is taking place in. But if you are doing this with a misrepresentation of that, sir, as a born-again Christian, truth is the foundation of our faith.
Yes, sir.
Our Lord and Savior is truth. That is a bold-faced lie. And so I turned to the woman, I said, no, ma'am, look, what if I told you that, yeah, you can keep your house, go ahead and make your mortgage payments, you can have your car, make your car payments, and yeah, you can still go to Kroger and get groceries, I'm just not going to give you any money. That is defunding. That's what it is in truth. And there is no plan B. It's alluded to, but there is none. And for us to be able to turn on a dime, and the destruction that was referred to here locally just a moment ago takes place. You stand for law and order. Sheriff's primary responsibility is running the jail and serving papers. You get a B&E, come on up and make a report. Maybe we'll get lucky if we've got somebody there to even take the report. In a small county, you're kneecapping us. And also, you can't paint the performance of our public schools with the same broad brush as the large metropolitan areas that are dealing with the issues that they are every day. And apart from that, have a good day.
I want to give you both a chance to respond to that, and then I also want to ask your question there, because that was the
I think
question I
there-
planned to close
I don't
with.
know if any respond to that. And John, I'm going to ask about the number of...
Well, I want to ask you the idea that, are people being told that this will not defund anything?
Yes,
That-
they are.
That's not our message.
Oh, no, no, no.
That's not our message. No.
Look at the video
Yeah.
on YouTube, please.
So
Yeah,
you're
but
saying that your message is not
No.
that this
Now,
will
did you say that we did it?
What's that?
Are they saying we did a video?
Well, I think that the implication is that your circulators are saying this.
I still want to hear what they plan to do about the services that are going to be annihilated. Because those same people that are going to be affected, that you're saying, oh, I get to keep my house, but the police aren't going to come there when somebody tries to break in and steal all their stuff or hurt them. I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, let's be realistic here. If you look at your property tax bill, sorry.
I'm sorry.
If you look at your property tax bill, all right, let's break it down. The big elephant in the room is the education piece, okay? So now, if you look at the percentage of what you're paying as far as police, fire, and the rest of the things that we consider as essential services, that's only a small portion of your bill. We have over 900, I don't know, we got at least 1,300 cities, villages, townships. All of them have the ability to levy a tax, all right? My contention is, well, that can be changed.
No, they don't.
That can be changed, is what I'm saying.
The legislature's not looking to do that.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, if we do not force something to happen, it will never happen, because no one is just gonna voluntarily say, oh, I'm just gonna cut my budget. It doesn't happen that way, because we're not wired that way. And now, what I'm saying is this, we're not talking about defunding anything. All we're talking about is shifting the responsibility.
Result.
Yeah, so, what, through taxation? But I don't want the taxation tied to my home. It's very simple.
Real quick, can you get your question real quick? We gotta wrap up here.
The subject of the educational component of the taxpayers is something that's been discussed from your side of the desk as well as from this side of the room.
Yes, sir.
And I've heard, Mr. Massie, you spoke on both sides of the topic. On one hand, when asked, why do our voters vote for the levies that support our libraries and our schools and the fire departments, you say they're uneducated.
Exactly.
However, when the taxpayers ask, do you want to pay taxes? And they say, well, no, then you believe that they're fully educated on the ramifications of
Exactly.
the removal of that. So how do you square speaking of the taxpayer as fully educated to the ramifications of their decision to remove the tax, at the same time saying they're uneducated with regard to their support of the levies that support the services that they want?
If you don't,
You can't have that both ways.
if you don't think that the people will vote to abolish the property taxes, then you have, if you don't think that they're going to vote to abolish the property taxes, you don't have anything to worry about then. They'll vote it down.
It wasn't really what he
But
asked.
if you just ask them, do you want to abolish your real estate taxes? They'll say, well, absolutely. Without the understanding or the educational component to know that they won't have 911. They won't have the fire department come to them. They won't have the basic services of the courts and the prosecutor.
Not everyone is signing the petition, and we're just saying that we believe that the people have the right to express to the legislators. And the problem is that the legislators have not been listening to the people for a very long time, and they have adjusted their budget. They've taken care of their special interest groups as opposed to the average citizens, and that's what we want corrected.
Thank you.
Thank
think
you.
that's where you
Real
should
quick, I want to end with your question, which I've asked you before, and you've been reluctant to provide. How many signatures do you have? You need 443,000 approximately valid signatures.
We need 413,488, I believe is the number. Our goal is to collect 15% of the last gubernatorial election, which would be about 620,000. And we're not giving those numbers out that we have, and there's a very basic reason. Senator Jerry Serino, at a Willoughby Hills function a few weeks ago, declared war on we the people. He told the 100 or so politicians in that room, he said, I don't want you to sign the petition, and I don't want you to vote for it if it gets on the ballot, and I want you to tell 100 people that you know not to sign the petition. So we viewed that as a declaration of war on we the people for Jerry Serino, and when you're at war, you never give the enemy any intel. So we're not doing that.
Transparency then.
Oh, sorry.
You can say whatever you want. You can say whatever. You
Well,
can,
the question was, if you're in favor of transparency, why not transparently?
you know the difference. You know the difference.
I'm asking.
Well, unfortunately, we have to wrap this up. You have a session here. The general session is coming up at 2:15.